Today makes a bit of a change. This is quite a beautiful day. Blue skies everywhere. A little bit chilly. The road surface is cold. It's a little bit damp. So today I've chosen to drive an Audi RS3. Should be quite fun. This is a small, compact, four-wheel drive saloon car with a 2.5 litre, 5-cylinder, turbocharged engine and basically 400 horsepower, 355 pounds-feet of torque. Quite a lot, not as much as the M4 I tested last week, but still a good figure for a car of this size. And extremely potent performance. We're talking 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. If you opt for the speed limiter raise on the options list, it's a 174 mile an hour car. It's seriously fast. But is this car just all about the engine? Let's find out. So I am currently in comfort mode. I'm going to ignore all my biases towards M cars and all that stuff. There's going to be a time in 10 or 15 years where we're not going to be able to get cars like this, and instead of, you know, in the past people have been like, oh, I don't like this car, I prefer this one, that car's rubbish, blah blah blah. We're all going to look back at cars like this in a very sentimental way. We're going to be like, do you remember when we went out in that RS3? Do you remember how quick it was? Do you remember how amazing it sounded? Do you remember the M2, how tail happy it was? We're all going to reminisce and miss these sort of cars. So I'm just going to enjoy the fact that it exists and enjoy the drive. So I'm going to take you on this little journey. So we're currently going through town, some slower roads, 20, 30 mile an hour, and it's a very comfortable car. This doesn't have the magnetic dampers, which I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. I would probably not have them, because as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather just have one ride quality. I don't really want to be chopping and changing between the two. I know the M4 had that and it was quite nice to be able to customise the car, but in truth I just want to jump in the car and enjoy it. And I think also when you have to start replacing items like magnetic dampers, you're going to be hit with some considerable bills, and I don't really want that. These cars are becoming more affordable now as they hit the used market. This is a 7-year-old car now and it's 33 grand. So people who are stretching to afford these cars aren't going to then want a 2 grand bill for 2 magnetic dampers. So I quite like the fact that it's got the simple system on it. That raises a little point for me actually. The Ferrari Purosangue, which has this new system, this fully active suspension. If you've seen one of those suspension units, God knows how much they're going to cost if they go wrong. They've got to be 10 grand each, easy. But I suppose the car is $500,000 spec'd up, so it's a drop in the ocean, isn't it? So yeah, quite a simple setup with this car. It's got the sports exhaust system, which was £1,000 extra, which I think is a little bit mean, but this has it, and I think it's worth having. It's just quite a premium, isn't it? And what it means is the 5-cylinder noise, the warble, the way this starts up with this very metallic sound, almost like an old E46 M3, is a really nice touch, especially when you're waking up in the morning, you start it up, you just get lifted by this classic Quattro sound. And then when you're up in the revs, it feels like a little V10, baby V10 from an R8 or something, but with more of a torquey feel. It's a great engine. The sun is quite low today, so it just looks like I'm more pale than I usually am. Interior wise, we've got a little bit of Alcantara on the steering wheel, really nice design. Again, a small airbag unit like the M4. The dashboard, this was getting towards the end of its life, this RS3, the 2018, so the dash is a few years old by this point of release, and competitors had already moved on a little bit. So although it's nicely laid out, it's not too complicated, there's not too many buttons and stuff, I think later interiors slightly expose it. But a lot of people love this interior, they love the simplicity. This doesn't have the super sport seats, but they're still very comfortable. I've got the heated seat on, they're very good. And it's just a nice place to sit. I've got virtual cockpit, which is really nice to have a look through, like the big map. Having the rev counter in the middle is a really nice touch. And we've got little charts here which display how much power and torque you're using. I'm currently using 4% power. Easy to drive. But what happens when you want to enjoy yourself a bit more? Well, I'm on a slightly quicker road now, so I'm going to put it in manual. I'm going to put it in dynamic. You might hear the engine note change slightly. No. Ford Granada going past us. Cool. Didn't have a massive change in character then when I went to dynamic, but I think after a couple of downshifts, and the car behind me is now a small dot. This isn't a remapped car, this is completely standard, and that is ludicrous pace. And it doesn't matter what condition you're in, rain, shine, it will do that every single time. It is quite special, that feeling. And that noise is addictive. Do it again. Brilliant. The engine is fantastic, as is the gearbox. Really sharp. Wow. Okay. But we knew it was a fast car, didn't we? I want to see what it's like actually in full auto in dynamic. So it's changing gear for me. It's just keeping the revs slightly higher. It's changing down slightly sooner. So we're at nearly 3,000 RPM at 36 miles an hour. It's kind of like in ready mode. I'm ready to go. Top tip actually, if you own one of these cars, make sure you've heated up the engine before you do any of these pulls. They are special engines and they need to be treated with a certain amount of respect. So make sure it's up in the 80s temperature wise, and then you're all good. There's not much quicker on UK roads than this. There really isn't. That AMG GT we had, wouldn't know where this has gone. Obvious. A really interesting car. I want to understand a little bit more about the dynamics. How does it handle? In comfort, it's quite a bit of roll actually. I'm just on a straight road, just doing a bit of twisty-turny, and you do feel the body change like that as you turn. I don't think dynamic's going to help much because it doesn't have the dampers. I'm going to go manual. Let's just go around this roundabout and just see what's what. Okay, so the grip is immense, it really is. And what I was expecting was the front end to push first, but it didn't do anything. The rear didn't go, the front didn't go. I felt like I could just go faster and faster around there. That's a really good four-wheel drive system. It's Haldex, so it's predominantly front-wheel drive, but it has had some adjustments over the S3. And what it means is it sticks to the road. It really does. Gearbox is phenomenal. Really responsive on downshifts. rides really well actually. I would definitely not have the magnetic dampers. You don't need them unless you're doing like serious track work and you want that firmness, which you might not even want it if you're going over curbs and stuff. I would just stick with the basic setup. It's the engine and gearbox you want, and they're not optional extras. You just get them. Yes, 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 yes. It's slowly winning me over, this thing. So we've talked about the inside. This doesn't have the additional bits of carbon fibre, which I'm not bothered about really. I've been thinking about carbon fibre. I'm not that much, I'm not that sad, but why do we like it so much? Carbon fibre! Everyone seems to want carbon fibre trim on the inside, on the outside, and I do like it, I will admit, but what about in 20 years? Are we still going to like the look of it? What's made us like it? Is it because it's expensive and it's just on show, like I can afford carbon fibre, or do we genuinely like the look of it? I hope it's not going to become like an Artex ceiling of the car world, and in 20 years we're going to be ripping it out or painting over it. But one to discuss, I guess. I'm going to go around this roundabout again. Dynamic. There's a bit of gradient on this roundabout, so I'd expect the front to have something to say. A little bit there, just as the camber changed. Yeah, a little bit more there, but I was doing silly speeds, so it's expected. The front goes first. I think if you were a bit more aggressive with it, the rear would probably start to have its say, but that's just Haldex, isn't it? M2 around there would have been fun one day. It's just this engine and this gearbox. It's quite a grown-up car for something of this size, and they're really popular. This is the 5th or 6th one we've sold in the space of 18 months. We've had remapped ones, we've had standard ones. I've kind of gravitated towards the ones that haven't been fiddled with because, one, it would give me the option to fiddle with it if I wanted to, and two, I think they're well set up from factory. Rivals, M2. Why do I mention the M2 in every video? There are different camps out there. M2, BMW rear-wheel drive sort of people, four-wheel drive people, and there's a smaller, shrinking number of front-wheel drive people. I actually really like the front-wheel drive category. I'd love to drive the new Civic Type-R, that looks phenomenal. I think the interior is probably the best interior I've seen on a car in the past 10 years. So, rivals, RS3, M2. Could you put a Cayman in there? Maybe. Civic Type-R. I think Golf R's and stuff like that are too down on the power and too down on the specialness, really. The cars that are very attractive ownership propositions, but they're not really cars you look back at when they drive past. You would with this purely because of the noise it's making. People who have bought saloons off us have commented that they like the practicality of the saloon, but I would probably argue that it's less practical. You see, the way I see it is, it has a lower roofline to me, and if you want to put a child seat in the back and a kid, it's going to be more of a problem. And the fact that you can't put the back seats down properly and there's, you know, that smaller entrance into the boot means it's less practical. So it's more the aesthetics which would sway people between the two. I think the developments between M2 versus RS3 have been quite interesting. BMW have been really clever in the way that they have now based their M2 on the M3/M4 platform. So it now feels like a much more grown-up product, I've driven one for a mile or two, and it feels totally different from the previous M2. It feels extremely sure-footed, solid, and a cut above an RS3 in terms of quality and design. And it's kind of left the RS3 behind. That has kept the same recipe, really. It's more just a development of the previous RS3, whereas I think the M2 is a profoundly different car. So I feel like they're no longer competitors. The M2 is just this standalone product which competes with the cars above it in BMW's range, in my view. When they eventually kill off this 5-cylinder engine, it's going to be a bad day for the RS3, because I don't think people are going to buy it otherwise. It is this engine that people want, and if it got replaced with a 4-cylinder, even if it had hybrid assistance and it was stupid performance, I don't think people are going to buy it. Let's appreciate the fact that this car exists, and it has done with this engine for 12, 13 years. Nice one, Audi.